this is Charlie. We don't normally both wear grey because that way it looks like we're both not. But we, EXALT, we founded EXALT in late 19. So I worked in the city. I was in banking. Charlie was in marketing. And we've always wanted to do our own thing, but just it was never the right time. Transpired 1920 really wasn't the right time to pick up on your point, because obviously we didn't know what was quite around the corner. So we set the business up, we incorporated the business in late 2019 with a view to launching kind of the spring. That didn't quite work out as we planned. So we ended up launching in August 2020. So I guess we're now, what's that, 26, 28 months in. So it's going well. You and I are particularly tired. We are obviously a married couple as well. So we work together, live together, and all that kind of thing. So it's
we share a desk here and also at work. We keep it lean.
We do keep it very lean. Yeah, but so we the sort of the business idea, if you will, was we, like a lot of people at time for sort of trying to cram lots into their day. We'd be, going out to the gym, going to a meeting, running to the airport, all those kind of things. And there wasn't a sort of a healthy sort of, correct macro product out there that was fresh, that tasted nice. And lots of sort of Huel, pasteurized grenade type things you can buy in Holland and Barrett that were maybe 20 grams of protein, but they were sort of had a 5-year use by date because they were pasteurized or full of things that you couldn't pronounce. We wanted to consume something that you knew what everything was. So you could go and have a drink made for you in a high-end gym that cost you 6, 7, 8 quid, but it wasn't convenient and wouldn't last. So we were like, is there not something out there? Is there not a way of improving the situation? We can't be alone in thinking this was the case. So many months, we decided to use HPP, which is a process whereby you put pressure through products. Same as cold pressing in juices. It's quite a well-established market. Not used in protein, very rarely used in protein. It's an expensive process, and it can alter the makeup of the product. It can make it quite thick. Effectively, it becomes like cottage cheese if you get it wrong. So you play around with time and pressure. So we, many months, we got to the point that we were happy, and then we launched the business in August 2020. That was we launched with 8 SKUs, which is definitely more than most people typically launch with, I think.
Well, we were quite lucky in that so much of our growth has been inbound, like Selfridges heard about us at a barbecue, even before we'd sort of finished the product development or the branding, and then asked if they could list us for an exclusive for they wanted exclusivity for a month, and now we're still there in their tiny fridge with 7 SKUs, and it sells really well.
It does one of our best sales, yeah. So we launched DTC at the same time as a select bunch of wholesale partnerships. We were going to focus on corporates first. I come from the corporate world. I was at Citigroup for 7.5 years, and 9,000 people in a building, captive audience, one restaurant selling a bacon and eggs, muffins and fish and chips. I was like, I want to do something better than that when I'm sitting at my desk for 12 hours a day. So we thought we'd focus on that market first, but obviously people were not at their desks for quite a long time for obvious reasons. So we went down the DTC route, launched DTC in August 2020, and then a bunch of wholesale partners, Planet Organic, Selfridges, Ocado.
All of whom were inbound. That was on Instagram. They messaged us and said, "Can we chat?"
We spent a lot of time and effort on Instagram. It's quite a focus on our kind of marketing, marketing. So we were very sort of sassy, confident, maybe a bit too much sometimes. And and then we had some good inbound people from there. Conscious that we were not dietitians, we're not nutritionists. We had a passion, but we weren't qualified. So we brought a dietitian in very early on. Once the dietitian was there, they're typically better qualified than nutritionists. And we wanted the sort of science behind the product to be strong enough that if you were a semi-professional sportsman, a weekend warrior, to use that example, you could sort of rely upon the correct macro split of the product. Likewise, if you were just someone who wanted a nice tasting drink after the gym or in place of a meal because you're doing Zoom calls, that worked for you as well. So we sort of nailed the macro side of it. We've got some taste consultants in to help on the taste. So we kind of thought that we kind of covered both those bases. And we've grown very well in, as we say, a challenging market since then. The business is about half and half. It's split between DTC and wholesale. We've got about 25 wholesale partners and direct to consumer. Yesterday, weirdly, was our record direct to consumer day in history in the 2.5 years. seemingly on a grey, miserable Thursday. I've got no idea why. So it goes to show you that sometimes you can plan for things, and other times things just happen. Not complaining, very exciting, but it happened for seemingly no reason. So yeah, it's all good. It's all very exciting.
Are you was the business bootstrapped, or did you go out for investment?
Yeah, so a combination of the two. So we were actually made redundant from the city in our jobs. So I say City. Charlie was actually for a bank as well. He was marketing for a bank. Not very exciting marketing for a bank. But I guess we were lucky in the sense that we were both made redundant, which was terrifying at the time. We were both well looked after in our respective businesses, so we were both let go. So we had the money to start the business, and then sort of after 6 months, with some friends and family came in as well to sort of help our development. And since then, we've expanded it out to a couple of angel investors as well. And I mean, for example, we didn't. I mean, our sort of costs weren't ginormous. Our input costs were expensive. Recently, of course, we've launched. We can get to that shortly. We've launched a partnership with Tottenham Hotspur, which is a 4-year deal to supply the first team with bespoke nutrition. So we're now going down a bit of a pro angle as well. That's required a lot more capital investment. Separate production days. You don't want to be giving anybody any kind of food issue. Least of all, you want to be giving Harry Kane any kind of food issue. So we've adopted some even more stringent approaches to cross contamination and that kind of things. That's required some more spend recently. And did you want to touch on the products? That's kind of your baby.
I think other than that, sort of, as the focus is sort of on the sports element, we've always thought of it as being we designed it as being sort of a performance brand, but it sort of, I don't know, during COVID, you've got to follow the money, otherwise the business is in jeopardy. So we followed the money, and it's sort of, we ended up more in the Yummy Mummy crew, which wasn't quite where we thought we were going to go, but it's still a very loyal customer base to have, who have a higher propensity to spend more on wellness products. So then the shift back to performance was also initiated by Nike. So they got in touch with us to do their 50th birthday celebration. So we designed a custom drink for them. And then off the back of that, we then do sort of 2 to 4 events co-branded with Nike a month in London, which is pretty cool. And then
we do Peloton as well. So Peloton opened their flagship recording and also cycle studio in London. They do all the filming for European Peloton spin classes there, and we provide all the nutrition for that. So we have an EXALT Peloton offering internally in Peloton in Covent Garden. So we have sort of pivoted a little bit back more towards the performance, which is kind of where we wanted to be. Because again, I thought there was a lack of nutritionally balanced products that were healthy and also tasted nice. I mean, if you take our range is now 11 SKUs, but if you look at one of our main products called Morning Glory, it's perfect for now. It is 23 grams of protein, 25 grams of carbs, double espresso, a little bit of date sugar, and some oats, and that is it. So that is, that's, if you were, people go, it's £5 a drink. Yeah, it's £5 a drink, but they're made in a small volume. They last for about 2.5 weeks in the fridge. But if you were to replicate that macro profile by going to Pret, by buying 3 eggs, by buying some oats and coffee, it costs you £9. So I'm not saying you always want to take our option over theirs, but if you are running to the tube, you've got back-to-back meetings, it's a bit easier to consume that than it is to have a breakfast or something that's not healthy at all. So that's kind of been the angle that we've gone down on that side, and then we've got the performance side to back it up as well.
Where next?
Good question. So I think we've been very Tottenham launched a month ago, and that's a 4-year deal. We were very excited about doing the work with those guys. No one else is really doing bespoke nutrition. So to put that into context, we do not something I want to replicate with everyone. It's very time consuming. But their nutrition team at Tottenham do monthly blood work with the first team. And based upon that blood work, we can tweak their inputs, so be it increasing magnesium levels or zinc or BCAA, for example. So that's a very bespoke offering for those guys. They've got 23, 26 in the first team squad. That is interesting. They've drawn a lot of interest from other sports clubs. So we've had a lot of incoming inquiries now from a bunch of other Premiership clubs, from particularly tennis, and interestingly from a US-based MLS football team at the start of the week as well. So the core business will always remain. We've got a really loyal customer base. Once you work out how our products fit with your life, it really fits and it really works. When you know that you are, if you've got 3 mornings of meetings, 30% of our business from our DTC is subscription, and that is your ordering weekly, fortnightly, monthly, and it becomes part of their routine. We've got customers on their 190th order, and if something goes wrong with the delivery, you get them a drink, or
they pay for their Uber to their Cotswolds house to make sure they have it on the weekend.
So I think the core, I think there's enough business to go after within the core, and it's a product that we love, and it's obviously paid the bills more or less for a few years. But I think the pro side of it is really interesting. Notwithstanding that as well, without taking on too much at once, I think there is a market for slightly lower end products. We spoke to Waitrose, for example, and Waitrose said we love the confident nature of the brand and what you represent. You're just too expensive for us, and that's going to Waitrose. So, but they say if you were £3, £3.50 rather than £5, there could be a place for you. So whether or not, I wouldn't base a business decision around one listing, but I do think there is a bit of a gap. There's quite a lot of low end products, and then there's those at the high end. I do think maybe there is a gap in the market for something that's a little bit cheaper as well as an entry level product. But that's a different kind of use case, and it's a different setup and production, etc. So I'm not sure what that looks like yet.
Anyone got any more questions for Dan and Charlie this morning? Anyone would like to raise a question? Hugh.
Yeah, guys, I've got a question for you with regard to the health conversation that you're building. There are a number of what I would call chronic conditions, like diabetes, for example. Have you thought about majoring on that as an opportunity? Because that's a massive market.
So, yeah, it's something we sort of touched on, and I think sort of glucose sensitivity is becoming sort of increasingly more an area of focus within public health. We use a combination of natural sweeteners, so stevia or erythritol, but we also use a lot of fruit in our product. So it's a bit of it's not an area that we're particularly focusing on. We're looking at launching a keto product. So obviously low carb, it's in the pipeline. We already have 11 SKUs. We only fall out about marketing spend and the number of SKUs that we have and cleaning. So it's on my wish list, but to decide whether we do it or not. But we are just in the process of having our a performance nutritionist from Loughborough join the team. So she joins next Monday, which is very exciting. So she's going to be sort of bolstering our in-house nutrition capabilities as well.
Okay, so got one other question, which really is around scale.
Yeah.
And how do you scale? Because every time you go into a bespoke market, yes, you're having that challenge of adding, for want of a better phrase, an extra offering. Therefore, the production needs to change. Have you given much thought to the scale conversation?
So we're already looking at everything we're a one-stop shop in Holloway. So we do the production weekly or twice a week, as well as the fulfillment to DTC and wholesale partners. We're looking at working with a contract manufacturer to do some of the juice production, which is a little less customized, as well as moving to a bigger facility in the next 6 months. But in terms of kind of scale for the personalization route, we're sort of planning to do a higher end offering for DTC customers. Because our drinks already, at a premium, they're £6 a drink. But we're looking at doing a performance range that's customized for sort of the weekend warriors, the Ironman crew, which will be more expensive. So while it's sort of scale on one hand, sort of for the supermarkets is the focus, we're equally diverging to try and take the learnings from Tottenham to then provide a consumer product off the back of that, which will be more expensive.
I think just back up that point, I think something that the core business definitely is scaling, and there are definitely a lot of inefficiencies. I mean, we still do some things today that we did when we launched two years ago. We're very, very lucky. We were introduced to a consultant about a year ago who was ex-head of chilled food innovation at Unilever, and he ran multiple plants. So it's come to our 1,500 square foot facility. I think it's a bit of I think he thinks it's amusing, but it's also a bit of a challenge. But he's been very good at sort of suggesting new ways of doing certain things. I mean, we used to bottle by hand. We have a bottling machine. It sounds pretty basic, but we would physically be pouring from 5-litre jugs, and that would also take a while. We knew that needs to change, but with his help, we put in place a bottling facility that makes life much easier and much less labour intensive. So there are still a number of efficiencies that we can carve out, even in the current facility, before we move to a new one. You're completely right, and we saw an investor yesterday, and he raised the exact point you just mentioned, that he was concerned scaling something that is more personalised. The Tottenham production, for example, is not a quick production day, and nor would you want it to be. It needs to be perfect. But those drinks are, if you're supplying a Premiership football club, cost isn't really an issue. So you were able to, and because of the bespoke nature, you were saving their own compliance internally of supplements is much higher because it's all in one place, and it saves them internally a lot of time as well. So the nutrition team can focus on nutrition rather than making drinks. That's typically how it happens. Or they're buying in a product that's not as good. So we're saving them a lot of time, which allows us to charge a decent premium. So I don't know how scalable that is. We'd be very careful about how many relationships we take. If we suddenly end up in a situation where we have 10 Premiership clubs, then we need to readdress a lot of the business, but we could certainly take on a few, and then some individual, sort of athletes as well. There'd be no problem doing that. Currently, we separate the Tottenham production day away from everything else. But there's no reason why that couldn't be Tottenham plus a few other clubs, for example, at the same time. But I take your point. That is definitely a long-term concern. But it's also, we watched the Spurs-Chelsea game a couple of weeks ago, and actually just watching players sipping Lucozade at half-time, not knocking Lucozade if anyone's a big fan, but it's not the best product they could be drinking at half-time. And when you're in an industry, in an area where the smallest of advantages make a difference, to me that looks like an opportunity. So yeah, I think it's not the path we plan to go down. We were introduced to the academy at Tottenham. They loved it. One of the academy managers became part of the first team, and we were introduced. So it kind of happened, but obviously it was a very exciting thing to be asked to do for a very small business, for a new business.
But it also helps justify if there's any sort of misconceptions around price, or kind of thinking price is a barrier. It really helps to address that, to think about how those partnerships lend credibility to the brand, particularly when we're so early on in our journey.
I understand the added value to Tottenham. It's an easy one to be able to justify, both in terms of productivity for everybody else. The challenge, unfortunately, is that you've got 15 or 25 or 30 of those bespoke opportunities. You're going to have to, that's a really interesting problem to crack, and I wish you well with it, because if you can do that, you can take this into a multi-dimension conversation with the pros.
Yeah, we will. I mean, we're not, as I said, we're not Tottenham went live at the start of last month. We've been very surprised, very pleasant surprised by the amount of incoming inquiries. Some less exciting ones. I think my favourite one so far, I don't know if you all recall, a milk advert in the late 80s, early 90s, where the kids like Accrington Stanley. I was like, who the hell are they? If you drink this, you'll get them. And Charlie the other day was like, who are Accrington Stanley? I was like, why is that? They've just got in touch. I was like, oh, amazing. So we didn't have much. We didn't have a very long conversation, but that was we don't have any money, but we can provide us with the same drinks as Tottenham. The answer was no. But yeah, it certainly will be a challenge if we get to that point, but we're not quite there yet. So for now, it's on let's keep it in the thinking bucket, and our consultant from Unilever will be called into action in due course.
No, I mean, it's fabulous brand management and an opportunity, but it is a complex conversation, unfortunately. But wish you well with that, gents.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Not at this point. I think there's nothing in the chat either. How much reliance would you say, if you was given advice to a fellow founder, should they place on the relevance and importance of partnerships and effective partnerships?
I think it's sort of the hardest part about partnerships is securing them, but equally secondary to that is working out which ones are going to be the most lucrative depending on kind of your objective. Is that brand awareness? Is that sort of credibility of the product? Is that about reach, working with sort of another brand or sort of influencers? So I think first of all, it's difficult getting the partnerships, but then it's also harder working out which ones and how many of them you can afford, both from a commercial perspective, also from time to manage.
I think the one thing I would probably add to that as well is it's also been aware that does that change the perception of your own business? We were very conscious bringing on a football club, and Charles already alluded, kind of jokingly, but semi-seriously, that our demographic was sort of affluent women. I mean, that really is part of it. So suddenly, if our focus has been on people who drink cold pressed juices in Chelsea, for example, things like facetious, but if they did, do you then partner with a football team? Does that somehow make them not feel part of the brand anymore, and does that alienate them in some way? And so I think already as a business with multiple SKUs that address multiple needs, you're in danger of people not really knowing who you are anyway, which is part of why we spend so much time on the brand as opposed to the products specifically. So our products some are very much protein shakes, some are very much cold pressed juices, yes, functional cold pressed juices, and others are meal like replacements. So there's already multiple uses. So I think there's a danger though if everything's sort of tied together somehow. So if we are focused on cold pressed juices over here and the yoga set, does having a rugby club or a football club mean that you are moving in a different direction that makes people think, well, how do I fit with that myself? I don't want to get big, So I think those partnerships it's about finding the right ones and how they benefit the entire business and the entire brand rather than taking off down different avenues.
And lots of every brand wants something for free, so we do get a lot of inquiries saying, oh, can you gift some product to this, can you do that? And then they sort of promise the word like, oh, mention your social media and do this business. They never fucking happen. So I think now we've had some of the partnerships which are now paid, for example. The Nike relationships is a paid relationship, but we can then be, when we have other brands that come to us and they go, oh, smaller brands, like, oh, can we have this for free? You can go, yeah, sure, you can pay for it. We can now be a lot cockier, not cockier, we can be much more confident in sort of what the value of our product is that we're offering to their events and those kind of partnerships. So it's sort of allowed our partnerships to be even more effective to us by being able to not only leverage the power of the partnership itself, but also make it a commercial opportunity.
And a question I love to ask first-time founders: what's been the biggest challenge coming from a corporate world to being a founder?
Yeah, so I think single-handedly it's about the team around you. I mean, obviously we wouldn't be able to function without hiring other people. I think unfortunately, we walk away from professional services involved with a big corporation. You expect whoever you turn to have a certain level of ability or drive, or sort of lateral thinking, where if something's not obvious, they'll find a way of making it work, or they'll find someone who can help them. I think we've found, which has actually helped us in some ways, getting. I think when we were having products made for us, we have our own protein blends made for us, for example, and we don't buy them off the shelf because we're quite specific with what we want. And I think very early on, we were ordering 500 kilograms at a time. And we were met with the whole thing had been delayed because they couldn't get hold of date sugar or something.
No, they wouldn't even say what it was. They're like, oh, it's just delayed. But then you have to say why.
And I think because you asked the question, you were like, okay, well, why? And like, well, we can't get hold of it. It was an even smaller amount. It was like 20 kilograms of date sugar. And it means the whole thing's delayed by 3 months. We were like, well, we will find you date sugar and we will ship it to you so you're not delayed because this causes a bigger problem. And they're like, oh, well, no one ever really says that. And I think there's this sort of, you come from that kind of professional background where, if the answer is no, it's, well, why is it no? And how can we make it yes? So I think we've sort of, and sometimes we've upset a few people, and me in particular, they're being a little too direct, because it's, I think you come from that background, you're sort of used to people doing things. But we have struggled a bit into, being brutally honest, with teams. I think people, particularly food and beverage, there isn't really, there's a lot of retention's really poor. And I think we always paid a bit more than everyone else, thinking that was sufficient, but demanded a certain level of, a certain level of quality in return, and it's not always there. And as a result, we've probably burnt through more staff than we would have wanted, and that in turn has been an issue. I think we're getting to the point now where it's getting a bit better, but certainly initially.
Well, even like with having the partnership piece, for example, it then means that we're in a more attractive brand to work for. And I think it's quite hard. It's always risky coming to work for a startup, particularly if they're not known. So one of the core things to kind of any team to be successful is then being bought into the mission of it rather than just the money. Even if we do pay more than other people, does it ultimately make a difference? No, seemingly. But if they buy into the mission of the brand and are, you know, they can align to it personally, but also be proud to work there, then that makes that output and sort of attention to detail far greater. So these partnerships have actually really helped us in terms of securing better talent, but also getting people to align more to the mission.
Yeah. And you can always use the LucasAid argument for that.
Very much so. And actually, just at the point, you also got to figure out what motivates some people as well. I mean, you know, we're not changing the world. We don't pretend that we are in any kind of way. But we do have a lot of customers who have, for whatever reason, have a health issue or they're recovering from something. And our products are whole foods. They're not processed. They're not, you know. And we have one customer who actually had cancer in his jaw. Unfortunately, he had lockjaw done over his mouth so far. And as a result, for the last however many years, his food, I use the word loosely, has been Huel and Complan. Nothing wrong with those two things. They've got a place, but there's not a lot of variety, and they are just smooth, homogenous type products. There was no sort of variations. And so he found out. I don't even know how he found us. He was down in Devon. We found out Jenks, and now he's a regular. He's a regular consumer, but he's actually sent some lovely emails saying, you know, you've actually really helped the fact that there's a lot of variety, range is big. It's nice and the other stuff, and actually it feels like I'm having proper food rather than something that sits in a warehouse for 5 years. And those kind of stories are really, really nice. And whilst it's great to help the Tottenhams and Hurricanes and those kind of things, that's fantastic. But those kinds of actually make you feel like you're doing a little bit of good. So if you have team members, we talk about mission, who buy into whatever it may be, they buy into working with Nike, great. But it's the fact that every now and again we get those kind of stories, which are actually really nice to hear as well.
Well, thank you very much. Any last questions from anyone? Whilst we got Charlie and Dan with us this morning.
Thank you for the.
No, I think
not a question, but just say, gents, I think you've got a really cracking opportunity there, and really enjoyed what you've said. And I think stick to your guns, because I think you're absolutely right. You know, one of my mentors many years ago used to say to me, the best word in sales is no. So bear that one in mind, because you know, from where you are, I think you're being bombarded left, right, and centre. Don't be afraid to say no.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you guys. I really appreciate your time this morning.
We're going to give you some love and attention on LinkedIn today, and a big thank you. And you're welcome to come in and join Start to Stand Up anytime you want as our guest, because I think your story is inspiring, and you're on the right path and mission there. So good for you guys. All right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.